Hello everyone. Welcome back to this channel. On this occasion, we will once again discuss several leaks that I managed to find and that I think are quite interesting to talk about. As usual, this information comes from a fairly credible source, namely Hakushin. Alright, without further delay, let's get straight into the discussion. How are you all doing? I hope you are all healthy and doing well. After in the previous discussion we highlighted two new characters from the Path of Elation who will be arriving in version 4.0. This time our focus will shift to one of the older characters who received major adjustments in the second Nova Flare, namely Sparkle. Many of you may already know a brief summary or general overview of the buff Sparkle received. However, in this discussion, we will go over in more detail and in a more systematic way what changes were actually applied to Sparkle's kit in the 4.0 V1 beta, as well as the implications of these changes on her role and position in the meta. Overall, Sparkle received a number of buffs that can be categorized as significant and highly impactful to gameplay. These changes not only improve ease of use, but also expand Sparkle's utility as a very flexible support character. We will start with the first change, which is to her skill. In the previous version, Sparkle's skill granted a 50% action advance to one ally, and this value does not change in the 4.0 V1 beta. However, the important change lies in the duration of the crit damage buff granted by this skill. Previously, this buff only lasted for 1.5 turns, but now its duration has been extended to a full 2 turns. Practically speaking, this duration is equivalent to Sunday's buff. In fact, you can even play double DPS together with Sparkle. Sparkle can alternately use her skill on each DPS without losing the crit damage buff at all. Next, we move on to the changes to Sparkle's ultimate. This change can be considered one of the biggest and most impactful buffs. In the old version, Sparkle's ultimate only restored 4 skill points. In the 4.0 V1 beta, the amount of skill points restored has been increased to 6. Not only that, every skill point that exceeds the maximum limit will be converted into 1 mask stack. These mask stacks can then be used to refill skill points until the maximum limit is reached. This mechanism makes skill point management much more stable and flexible, and you no longer need to worry about skill points being wasted when Sparkle uses her ultimate. Still regarding the ultimate, the duration of the cipher buff it grants has also been adjusted. Previously, this buff only lasted for 2 turns, but now its duration has been extended to 3 turns. Admittedly, the additional damage bonus per stack from Sparkle's talent has been reduced in value, from 10% to 5%. However, this reduction can be seen as a reasonable balancing step, considering that Sparkle's talent itself received major changes that actually make her much stronger and more universal than before. The changes to Sparkle's talent are one of the most important aspects of this buff. Previously, Sparkle's talent granted a 6% increase to damage dealt for all allies every time 1 skill point was consumed, with a maximum of 3 stacks. Now, the mechanism has been fundamentally changed. Every time an ally consumes 1 skill point, all enemies receive a 3% increased damage taken effect, which can stack up to 4 times. In other words, Sparkle no longer directly grants a damage boost to allies, but instead applies a vulnerability effect to enemies. If we compare the two, after Sparkle uses her ultimate, the old Sparkle could provide a total of 48% damage boost, while the buffed Sparkle provides a total of 32% vulnerability. We all know that vulnerability is a modifier that is far more universal and valuable than a damage boost. Moreover, in the context of the Path of Elation, damage boosts do not affect elation at all. Therefore, this change actually makes Sparkle more relevant in various team compositions and far more universal. As for her technique, Sparkle basically retains her old mechanism, which is entering the misdirection state and restoring 3 skill points upon entering battle. However, there is an important new additional effect, namely restoring 20 energy to Sparkle when entering battle. With this extra 20 energy, Combined with using an energy regeneration rate rope, Sparkle potentially can immediately use her ultimate after using her skill once. This allows her vulnerability buff to reach its maximum value much faster. Next, we move on to the changes to Sparkle's traces. The first trace still retains its old effect, which is regenerating 10 energy whenever Sparkle uses a basic attack. However, a new effect has now been added. Every time an ally who has Sparkle's crit damage buff from her skill consumes a skill point, Sparkle will regenerate an additional 1 energy. This effect further accelerates Sparkle's ultimate uptime cycle. The second trace has undergone a complete change. Previously, this trace was what extended Sparkle's skill buff duration to 1.5 turns from the original 1 turn. Now, that effect has been removed and replaced with a new mechanism. If an ally consumes 3 or more skill points in a single action, then Sparkle's next skill use will not consume any skill points. This mechanism makes Sparkle similar to Sunday, but with a clear advantage. Sparkle's skill truly does not consume any skill points at all, meaning Sparkle can still use her skill even when the team's skill points are at 0. In contrast, Sunday still requires at least 1 skill point to use his skill before getting a 1 skill point refund, so he cannot function when skill points are completely depleted. The third trace also received a major improvement. Previously, this trace was very specific to quantum characters, while non-quantum characters only received a 15% attack bonus. Now, this effect has been changed to a flat 45% attack increase for all allies without any conditions. In addition, allies who have the crit damage buff from Sparkle's skill will also gain an additional 10% all-type res pen. This effect makes Sparkle somewhat similar to Saridra, since Saridra can provide all-type res pen when her skill buff reaches 6 out of 6 stacks. However, Sparkle's trace can be considered better because its effect is more consistent and nearly permanent as long as her crit damage buff rotation is maintained. Lastly, we discuss the changes to Sparkle's Eidolons. Out of Sparkle's 6 Eidolons, only the first Eidolon received an adjustment. Previously, this Eidolon only extended the duration of the cipher effect from her ultimate and granted a 40% attack increase to allies. Now, its effect has been changed to grant a 40% attack increase to allies with the cipher status, as well as an additional 15% speed increase to Sparkle for 2 turns when battle starts or when Sparkle uses her skill. This speed buff can be considered effectively permanent, since Sparkle is expected to use her skill every turn. Overall, the buffs Sparkle received in the 4.0 V1 beta turn her into a combination of Sunday and Saridra, with strengths in skill point management, applying vulnerability, providing all-type res pen, and being able to use her skill without consuming skill points. If these changes remain until the final beta phase without significant nerfs, then there is a very high chance that Sparkle will occupy a Tier 0 position as a universal support in many team compositions. Alright, that's all for now, everyone. So what do you think about Sparkle's buffs in the 4.0 V1 beta? Do you think these adjustments are too strong? Or are they justified for the needs of the future meta? Please write your opinions in the comments section. And don't forget to share this information with your friends who also play Honkai Star Rail. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any other important updates. See you in the next update.